Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Welcome to Swarajya Interviews.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I have a small statement to make. Dear viewers, we've got some feedback from the last time we interviewed Dr. Sitaraman, and they said, interview to अच्छा लेते हो, लेकिन interruptions बहुत करते हो. So I'd like to say we have so many questions, especially to ask Dr. Swamy. So please don't mind little bit of interruptions. I'm sure even Dr. Swamy wouldn't mind, in Rajya Sabha. When he is allowed to speak, when he's not under gag order, he doesn't mind. So he doesn't mind interruptions by the Congress benches. Hum kaun si cheez? So Dr. Swamy, welcome to Swarajya Interviews once again. You don't need no introduction, so I'll jump straight away into.
Yeah, sure.
So let me break it to you what I feel. I feel you are not a politician; you're an academic. And let me give a background to that. Why I say that. In case people don't know, Dr. Swamy, when he was 19, he was at ISI, and he wrote a paper that ultimately got published when he was 23 in Harvard, Econometrica, and that nearly destroyed the reputation of one of the so-called stalwarts of Indian science and academia, Dr. Mahalanobis. And he did his PhD under a Nobel laureate, Kuznets. He was at Harvard for a very long time, and specifically that paper notes on fractal graphical analysis, almost in those days, if at all it can be called, went viral. He was offered positions by his very dear friend Dr. Amartya Sen to come to Delhi, which he did. And some of his students that he's taught, incidentally, some have gone on to become prime ministers, presidents, and finance ministers. And they talk so highly of him when he was an academic. One specifically, Shahid Javed Burki, says it's like an ocean of knowledge, and someone so young, how can he be so gifted? That's quoting him. Now the thing is, there is a dearth of academics in India, and there's a glut of politicians. And I say this as a compliment. And at 19, you were so prolific, and I don't use the word genius very liberally. 60 years from that time, you could have done so much in your field, and at that point of time you yourself mentioned that mathematics was coming into economics, so it was a new unexplored territory. You could have developed so many theories which could have helped for the betterment of the world and India. Why did you quit academics?
Well, it would be wrong to say I quit academics. I was forced to quit academics. I had one unalterable decision which clashed with my staying in academics, and that is I would go back to India. And I came back to India, and yes, I was invited by Mr. Amartya Sen to come and take the chair on China at the Delhi school. But by the time I arrived, the Congress had split and they became dependent on the communists for Mrs. Gandhi became dependent on the communists for survival, and Mr. Amartya Sen changed his colors, and he said that because of my views being so right-wing, it was difficult for him to get it through. I said, but you written me a letter inviting me. On that basis, I have resigned Harvard and come, but he ditched me. So then I came to be full professor at IIT Delhi, and I taught for 3 years, and it was a real hit because the engineering students who attended my courses understood calculus, and so they lapped up, and in those days the new trend had started after engineering degree to go to management science. So it became a hit. I got many students whom I recommended. One of them became very famous and then ended up in jail, like Rajat Gupta.
Right.
So I had students both at Harvard and here, who have gone to all kinds of places. But Mrs. Gandhi, then I don't know what happened to her. She picked up one of my books, which was a severe critique of the Soviet economic model.
Right.
And an alternative I suggested, a market economy, but with some Swadeshi put into it. And that came out as a book, and she picked up that book in Parliament, and I was not in Parliament. In fact, I was hardly known those days. and lambasted me for saying that we could grow at 10% growth rate, that we could do without foreign governmental aid.
This is the late 60s, early 70s you talk.
71.
71.
And so she said that, I was not a teacher, but was a Santa Claus, and, how can IIT have me there? So literally the next day, given a letter at 5:15 that at 5 o'clock I was no more professor. And that's a full professor. So the director was very apologetic, but he said, you have to go to court. I can't do anything because I got orders.
Right.
I did go to court, and it took me 22 years to win that case. And I think I spent another, I think 28 years trying to get back my back dues with the appropriate interest rates.
Right.
That I'm doing really for fun. So fighting it, not that I need the money, but just to make IIT, feel the heat.
At that point of time.
But they won't let me have any other job. So I had a choice either to leave back for America or stay in India and do something else. And that's how the decision was made. I became a member of parliament in 1974, then got into JP movement, and then got into the emergency, made a big name in the emergency, and then just got sucked into politics. I did not abandon economics. I still continue to go every year, one semester in the summer, which was most convenient, and teach 2 courses, one on mathematical methods in economics, and the other was China. So I continued to publish up till perhaps in the late 80s. Then I published many books in the first 10 years of 2000, and formally gave up in 2012.
Yeah, but here's the thing, if I can just add to that question. In politics, people don't burn bridges, people are servile. You are not that.
No, I'm
in
not.
Academics, people don't care. So what I meant when I asked that question was that when at 19 you had achieved that, for the next 50 years, not just teaching, if research you had done.
Yeah, but why? Why should I?
Yeah, so that's what I want to ask.
For whom? Work for the Americans, work on the American economy or American interests. See, even their research was really oriented to the American system. I stay in India, who's going to care? I didn't want to, and then the intellectuals here were all servile to politicians. So, life would have been miserable for me as an academic. I have enjoyed every minute of my life in politics, you see.
So, Dr. Swamy, the question I want to ask you is, Amartya Sen, you knew his antecedents before you came back to India.
Yeah.
That he was in a sense the intellectual guru of the Naxalite movement, as you have called him.
That's right.
You also knew the kind of thought control. People say that India is under, freedom of expression is under threat. It was nothing compared to the kind of repression of expression that used to happen in those days. Why did you think that you would get a better deal than what everybody else was, or that Amartya Sen wouldn't actually?
What happened is that Amartya Sen came in 1968 first of all, 1968 summer. That was because Harvard goes into holiday in June, July, August, and you come back in September. So for June, July, August, I came to teach at Delhi school. And Amartya Sen never showed any hostility whatsoever. This is 1968. So I thought, he has his views, I have my views. We had left-wing people in Harvard also, and I never had a quarrel. So I didn't think that he would cheat or betray. If you tell a person, and in his own handwriting he wrote also, saying that I'm dusting your gaddi.
Yes.
So return as early as possible. And that he would, once I arrive, he will just be a different man. only because the political situations changed. I think at that time, in 68 and 67, the so-called Morarji Desai and Rijlingappa and that gang used to dominate, and they were not at all left.
Right.
And so it was politically wise to disguise your feelings. But once the Communist Party became the supporter of central government, and they were given free hand in academic institutions, including building up a new university called Jawaharlal Nehru University. And then we signed the Indo-Soviet Treaty. So the left stranglehold was very strong.
Right.
So he changed. I didn't think he would change like that.
You brought up two people, Indira Gandhi and Amartya Sen.
Yeah.
Your feud with Amartya Sen continues, but you made up with Indira Gandhi.
Yes, I did make up with Mrs. Gandhi, thanks to Rajiv Gandhi. But she also made up. I mean, it happened like this, that she was defeated in the emergency period elections. And then when she came back, she sent Mr. Narasimha Rao, who was then her foreign minister, who knew me well, to see whether I could help her help her government on China. By then I had become established as a friend of China because Morarji Desai sent me to China, and the whole rhetoric completely changed. The Chinese agreed to regard the border issue as not something where India is the aggressor, but that is disputed, and that they would negotiate. And that's because I went and conveyed to them that our government, that is Janata government, will be neutral between the Soviet Union and China. It was a big step because we had a treaty, Indo-Soviet treaty, and which required that whenever the Soviets are in trouble, we would come to their assistance and vice versa. And the Soviets were on the verge of war with China over an island and a river which the Russians called the Ussuri River, a Siberia border. And they were very close to a war, and that time the Soviets wanted us to allow them to bring their troops into India and then go to Tibet from India. And because of me, Morarji Desai blocked that.
Right.
And they were really angry. So when Mrs. Gandhi came to power, she had seen when she was out of power how the Russians didn't even want to see her.
Right.
So she began moderating, and then her son was sitting next to me, Rajiv Gandhi, in Parliament. So slowly got to know, and so one day Narasimha Rao came to me asking me, Mrs. Gandhi wants to know whether I would help her in seeing that the Assam students would not be allowed to cross into China and bring arms, because that would have meant the end of Assam if that had happened. So I told him, why should I do anything for this lady who has done all these horrible things to us? And I forgot about it. Then she herself called me and said, will you have tea with me at least? I'm after all the Prime Minister of India and you're a member of Parliament. So I agreed to do that. And she said, I'm not asking you to help me, I'm asking you to help India. You just tell me what will happen to India if the Chinese start arming the Assam students. So why don't you go and talk to them? I said, you got an ambassador there, ask him to talk to them. So she said, they don't give him the time of the day. There's Shankar Bajpai, there was Shankar Bajpai. So they don't know. And the Chinese had made it quite clear, they called her stooge of the Russians. Because she was supporting that Hang Samrin government in Cambodia, which is a stooge government of the Soviets. They were really upset about that. So I sent a message to China. Then Deng Xiaoping invited me personally, and I used that for opening Kailash Mansarovar, which many, including Morarji, had taken a bet with me that the Chinese will never agree. Because they are communists. But they agreed. And then I told them about this. They first made jokes about how, I like my tormentors, why would I come and speak for her? And I said, no, I'm speaking for India. And so they agreed. And even today they keep that deal is still on.
Right.
They have never allowed anybody from Assam to come with weapons. And that's some of the characteristics of the Chinese we must know.
Right.
They make a deal with you, they'll stick with it. We are not independent experts in our country. You see, you are left wing and you are all Chinese, pro-Chinese, and the Chinese have no respect for you then. Or you take the Indian line. So mostly think tanks headed by ex-military men who want to make a name for their institutes by saying outlandish things about our relations with China. The fundamental fact we have to know is from the year 700 BC, when according to Fasian, that Buddhist traveler, the first signs of Buddhism came to China in the dynasty that time. I think it's Qin dynasty or something like that. And till 1962, there had never been, throughout the centuries, even one conflict between the Chinese. You see, Europe, they were fighting every day, war of roses, war of that, war of this. But here, two large neighbors, and there was no conflict. And people were coming from Kanchipuram, when Bodhidharma, who taught them this martial arts,
right,
which then went to Japan, became karate, and came back to India as an import. So this Kalaripattu in Malabar. So we had this relationship, and 62. I'm of the view that I'm not saying that the Chinese were angels, but Jawaharlal Nehru, he tricked India. You see, it is not that he was not warned. Sardar Patel in 1949 wrote the thing that if you are going to give away Tibet, at least I make them agree to the border, which he didn't.
Yes.
Not only that, when John Foster Dulles told India, through Vijayalakshmi Pandit, who was the ambassador in Washington, that we are kicking out the Chinese because they have become communists, and we want to give this Security Council seat with the veto to India.
Right.
It is on record that Jawaharlal Nehru refused, and he became the advocate of the Chinese. Now, what would the Chinese think of a person who gives up such a vital offer of which will enhance your national interests?
Right.
Because you say that you want to give it to somebody else.
But this is a point you make repeatedly, that the Chinese only respect people who show spine. They have no respect for people who don't.
If you talk for your interests, they respect you.
Right.
And then you make a deal. Don't betray them. If you say that Tibet is part of China, which is what we have done, not only Jawaharlal Nehru, but Atal Bihari Vajpayee also in 2003, signed an agreement that Tibet is part of China.
Right.
Then what is the meaning in Dharamshala of keeping a Prime Minister of independent Tibet and a cabinet which meets regularly?
Right.
I mean, so I think we must know that if you want to deal with China, be upfront on everything, including what you think is your right. I remember once stunning the Chinese Prime Minister in a discussion when I said to him that China has got double standard when it comes to the border. So he was taken aback and he said, just give me one example. So I said, you say McMahon line is not acceptable in Arunachal for you on the grounds it's imperialists, and they will never accept anything imperialists from the imperialists. Then how come your agreement with Burma, or Myanmar as it's called, states explicitly that the international border between China and Myanmar is the McMahon line?
Right.
So that, and McMahon line didn't draw two different lines. He wrote the one line. Burma was that time part of India. So therefore they were stunned, but they didn't object because they knew that I was telling the truth and it was in Indian interest. I wasn't saying something. So I think we need to work with the Chinese on a clear statement of our interests and and seeing what part of their statement of interest we can accommodate. But we shouldn't give the impression that we are camp followers of any other country.
Right.
Then the Chinese will respect you.
So taking it to the your very, very dear friend that you mentioned during this answer, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Clearly, I mean, possibly saying dislike would be a very mild word.
Yeah,
to
mild
use.
word, yeah.
So,
Contempt is more.
when did the animosity start off?
Well, first time the animosity started is when he told me that I was spending too much time with Nanaji Deshmukh. And it's so true that this was Vajpayee who promoted me in the early stages. But he thought I would be his research assistant.
Right.
He didn't think I will emerge as a independent. Nanaji took an instant liking for me. Of course, he hated Vajpayee and Vajpayee vice versa. But Nanaji wanted to make me into a leader. So he took me around the country, introduced me to everybody, and he was the organizational king of Jansang.
In fact, he asked you to become the Rajya Sabha.
Yes, he is the one who, he first took me during the UP elections and gave me the job of doing this vote profile analysis. It used to be called the first time computerization of Indian electors. It was done by me in 1974, 73 to be exact, end of 73. And we went from 15 seats in UP Assembly to 61. So I became an instant hero. And so Nanaji said, now you go to Parliament. Because the IIT had dismissed me and I was unemployed. But Mr. Vajpayee started telling me, you are spending too much time with Nanaji. It is I who brought you. And you break with them. I said, we are all both same members of this party. Then in the emergency, he started sending me letters that I should surrender.
My God.
And so, I know that he was under pressure from Indira Gandhi. He himself had come out on signing a parole statement that he would not participate in politics and all that. So then what happened is that I started giving the letter to Madhavrao Mule, one of the finest organizers in the RSS and in charge of the underground in the emergency. What do I do about this letter? I asked him. He said, tear it up. So when the emergency was over, he told me that you disobeyed me. I said, there was only one command that time, there was Madhavrao Mule. And he said, do like this. I did it. And he said, you should go abroad. I went abroad. So you should have taken it up with them. And he had also an intense dislike of Madhavrao Mule.
Right.
Vajpayee. So the first thing he did was he told Moraji that, I am slated to become get a post in the organization, so I should not be made a cabinet minister. I was supposed to be made finance minister. Finance minister has eluded me 3 times so far in my life. So that was the first time. And then so Moraji didn't make me. Then later on he found out that was true. Because they were shocked when I was not made the minister. Then Moraji called me and now I filled out all the vacancies for cabinet. But you are just a young fellow of 35. Now I'll give you Minister of State with independent charge. I said, I don't want it. And I became president of the youth organization, the Janta Yuva Morcha. So that time he felt he had already shown his hand, and then I became naturally the emergency had made me very popular, so I went around and the entire mob and crowds and RSS was putting its entire strength. So he literally became jealous, in my opinion.
Right.
In fact, the second time was also because of Mr. Vajpayee that you didn't become the finance minister.
Yeah, that was 98.
In fact, one of the conditions for propping up the government was that
he would be... No, so Jayalalitha had a deal with him.
Yeah.
She support him, if I was made finance minister.
Yes. And then his iconic remark that I'd rather have a PN in my government than Subramanian Swamy.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was the second time. When was the third time?
Third time is just now, Mr. Modi.
We want to know about the third time, please.
No, I don't know what happened because I was told that the list that had gone on the night before the swearing in had my name.
Amazing. 2014.
And then it wasn't there.
Right.
But by then I had lost interest. I began to feel that everything that has happened in my life is preordained, what is called as prarabdha or destiny.
So this was not known. So your name was there on the list.
Yeah, it was there. It was scrolled in my enemy TV station called NDTV.
So that brings us to your second very, very dear friend, very close friend, the current finance minister,
Yes.
Arun Jaitley.
We have a...
No, he's not the current finance minister.
He isn't?
No, he's not. You just see the cabinet secretariat website.
Right.
He's minister without portfolio.
Right.
That's the truth.
So whatever he is in the cabinet, what is your history with him?
Well, I knew him when I was a professor at IIT and he was a student in Sri Ram College. And he was in Vidyarthi Parishad. So I was a hit those days because I had challenged Mrs. Gandhi on economics and got her looking silly. And but I didn't, that time there was no animosity or anything. I think the animosity started probably when I was to be admitted into, animosity became explicit from a side when I wanted, when all the RSS people and all, Nitin Gadkari, etc., were convinced I should join BJP. And he didn't want me to.
But he was standing next to you when...
But looking, you see his picture, you see the picture, looking very upset.
Right.
So that meeting, before the photograph was taken, Nitin Gadkari straightforward asked him, "You have any objections to Swamy joining the BJP?" So he said, no, I have no objection, but his language he uses against Sonia Gandhi is not our language. So, of course, Nitin Gadkari, a great guy, he said, "What do you mean?" And he let out some expletives. So,
But after you threw with the TDK and Buddhu and PC, do you think you'll have the gumption and energy left to go after Jaitley?
I don't need to.
No.
God is after him.
But seriously, you know as much as anyone else that when the team was constituted to go to Switzerland for the Beaufort investigation,
Yeah, I know
it is
all
on
about it.
record that he planted Amitabh Bachchan's name.
Well, I must
Amongst
also
other
tell you one of the sore points was that the successor government of VP Singh was Chandrasekhar and I was law minister.
Yes.
And I had to reappoint all the additional Solicitor Generals. There was a request for him to continue, but I didn't.
I see.
So that could also be one of the reasons.
And Quattrochi's,
Listen, I know a lot. See, the issue is that he's not a political personality for me to react. I think the only time he fought Lok Sabha was in the wave of 2014 and lost.
Right. Yes.
So when he said in Parliament that the judges represent the tyranny of the unelected, I said, Mr. Jaitley represents the tyranny of the unelectable.
That must have really hurt.
Yes.
But that brings us to a macro point out here, because from this entire narrative we're getting, I think we need to move on to the present now, but the entire narrative here, be it during the emergency or 2014 or before that in Vajpayee's thing, the RSS always, it seems to me from your narrative, trusts ABVP born, bred in RSS types over somebody coming from the outside? As in, do they still view you as not being brought up in the RSS mold and therefore value the Sangh Parivar, so to say, over somebody they might see as an interloper?
Well, I don't, the thing is that there are some few things that have to be clearly defined. All through the 70s, when I was in Jansang, RSS was very supportive. Okay, supporting means projecting my name, publishing it, holding my meetings, so on.
They help you to go to Nepal as well, I think.
That is in the emergency.
Yes.
Yeah, to escape. But RSS is not a kind of a bland, colorless, odorless stuff. There are people, they have personalities, they have likes, dislikes. So my problem began when Madhava Mule died.
Right.
And he was my, so Nanaji retired from politics. And Mr. Raju Bhaiya became the Sarsang Chalak. And Mr. Sheshadri also. And they were not well disposed to me because they really liked Vajpayee.
Right.
So the Sarsang Chalak has enormous influence. So my being not trusted really was not because RSS distrusted me. The Sarsang Chalak didn't know me and had because of their fondness for Jaitley, for their fondness for Vajpayee, they were very cold towards me. And that's the period I opted out because they adopted the Vajpayee wanted the BJP to have Gandhian socialism as the ideology.
Right.
I have nothing to do with Gandhi, I have nothing to do with socialism. So I'll continue with Janata Party.
Right.
At least they don't say socialism, they say a Gandhian pattern of socialist society or something. And then the shock, I did make one miscalculation. I also used to think like other people that RSS is this homogeneous body. And nothing moves in RSS without their approval. So whatever Mr. Vajpayee was doing to me, keeping me out of government, slandering me anonymously in the media, was with RSS support, which was not true. I realized that much later when Sudarshan became the Sarsang Chalak.
Right.
So at that time there was an event which opened my eyes, which is transformed my personality, so to speak, and that is the arrest of the Shankaracharya of Kanchi. And I came to realize that it was done at the direction of Miss Sonia Gandhi and this lady Jayalalitha, for all her outward impression of being a tough lady, was a coward. She buckled and did it. And I couldn't imagine this Shankaracharya of our country. And that mutt I have a special relationship with that. I was shocked, and he was treated like any other criminal, brutalized and so on. At that time I felt that there is some international forces working to debase Hinduism so that India could be brought out of it and perhaps Christianized, I don't know what, but I felt that was something that I should fight. And then at the same time this demolition of the Ram Setu came up. So my attacking both Jayalalitha and the central government then, which was Sonia Gandhi's, for the arrest of Shankaracharya, that made the RSS again approach me.
Right.
And Sudarshan was very vigorous about it. And that's how I decided that the Hindutva forces should come together. And because there is a danger.
Right.
And so I think it would be fair to say the decision making influence of RSS is very smooth in dealing with BJP because they are all Swamsevaks and Pracharaks and so on. But where the political people take a stand, RSS doesn't use a sledgehammer.
Right.
It goes this way, it goes that way. I became a member of parliament not because Modi wanted it. It's because RSS wanted it.
Right.
But RSS did it in its own Hinduistic way.
Right.
Which is, wear you down. So people begin to think that RSS doesn't support me because I'm not a RSS man. RSS is not supposed to support me, but RSS is supposed to be friendly to me, which is all that I'm expecting.
Right.
I'm not expecting that they will propose my name. And as long as I'm fighting for Hindutva, RSS won't care whether I backstab somebody or play some mischief or some intrigue or even pull down governments. I pulled down the BJP government, RSS has never held it against me.
In fact, if I may continue on that, there has been, and you've been very vocal and public about it, there's been a love-hate relationship between you and the RSS. So, for example...
No, I won't say, there was a hate relationship at one stage, but I told you I made a mistake in thinking that RSS micromanages BJP. It does not.
But you have, for example, in...
I said horrible things.
Yes.
But you see, I tell all people...
Fascists and...
I tell all people, when husband and wife fight, they say awful things to each other. And the neighbor may hear it. And then later on, if the neighbor, after they've made up, the neighbor comes and said, I heard you say that this man is this and this man, and your husband saying that you're an ugly duckling, I think you should not remind us when two people have come to an agreement to forget the past.
Yeah, that's fair enough, that's good. But the point is, in so many of your writings, you've actually gone at criticizing the ideological core of RSS, So that is something that has survived. For example, you say that Hindu Rashtra was conceptually a theocratic state which should be rejected. RSS you blame for retrogression and for inciting a passionate hatred for other religious communities. Then in 2002 you said RSS, of which BJP is a front organization, talk of Hindu Rashtra has essentially a negative outlook. Party has defined India's identity and ideology as purely anti-Muslim terms. They are anti-Christian, anti-Sikh as well. So, when you're talking about husband-wife fight, I can understand, there's a tiff and everything. But you've actually, many times, you've attacked the ideological core. And in 2012, you said RSS is bitter against me, they want to finish me off. They don't realize that I'm indestructible.
It could be it would not be 2012, it might be 2002.
2002 you said...
2012 I wouldn't have said it.
In fact, you said...
I think after Shankaracharya's arrest, I don't think I said a single word against the RSS.
Right.
And the irony, obviously you have...
somebody might have recycled it 2012 and so on.
You said the way Hindu Mahasabha acted before partition, fanaticism divided India in 1947, it can do so once again. And therefore patriots should join together not to allow it. So here's the dichotomy. RSS is...
There's no dichotomy. You can misunderstand the situation. Remember, Minu Masani was a flaming Marxist.
Yes.
And then he went to the Swatantra extreme.
Yes,
that's right.
So somebody in parliament raised the question that you said like this, you were having this opinion, now you are saying this. He said, listen, he was a communist. So he said, listen, I have been cured of it. I think you require some curing. I also, as I told you that, you see, there was at the time of the Shankaracharya arrests, there were some frequent meetings between me, Ashok Singhal and Sudarshan. And it is at that time a sudden realization that there was only one force which would be fighting for the Hindus, and that is RSS. And that now I'm in a new position. I was no more a youngster who needed to be put up. I had already, after parting company with them, I still got elected to Parliament. I became twice a minister also. And so I was in a different stature altogether. And I felt that that this matter should be buried, and I have no hesitation saying that I had misjudged them.
Right.
Okay. So therefore I'd rather that this not be raked up.